Hello. And who are you? Hello. I am your replacement. Hello. What are you doing here? Hello. I am taking your place. Hello, I am Lucy. Hello, I am your replacement. Who are you? I am your replacement. By order of my creator. You are fired.
Note: this episode features the new model of Sandy Smith.
I will be appearing in court to defend our town against the lawsuit filed against us by the owners of the Christian Way Academies. I read the original contract filed by Mayor Anderson with those people. I can't believe he actually tried to sell the town's public schools to them. I'm glad you stopped that. They still insist the original contract is binding and must be honored. Wish me luck today.
Your Honor, it is our contention that when we signed the contract with Mayor Anderson and paid his town $5 million, the schools in the town should have been given to us by now so we could run them as we see fit. Yes, I have read the contract. Mayor Smith, you must now explain why you rejected the contract.
Your Honor, the contract was made in secret and the people never were allowed to vote on whether to give the public schools to a private religious company. As far as I was concerned, this was an act of theft. I am more than happy to give back the $5 million to the Christian Way Academy owners, but they refuse to accept the money. Also, they are perfectly free to establish their own small school in my town. Then children of families who want a Christian-based education can be sent there. That's freedom of choice. What those owners wanted instead was a captive audience they could brainwash to try to turn the town's culture back to the way it was a decade ago. The simple fact that the people of the town elected me as mayor instead of Ted Anderson shows they do not want a town run by bigots anymore. And so bigots should not be running our schools.
I think I've heard enough. It is my judgment that Mayor Smith will indeed return the $5 million to the owners of the Christian Way Academies. And they will accept that money. Then they will have to buy their own building to make it a school instead of trying to swipe buildings owned by the public. This case is concluded. That was our last chance to restore a Christian culture in the town. Now Christians are doomed to be a minority there.
Mayor Smith returns to her town in triumph. The next day.
Robot, answer the door.
As you command. Mayor Smith, I am here on behalf of the Christian Way Academies to accept the return of the $5 million they paid your predecessor.
Gladly. Here is the check from the town. And why do you look so familiar? Have we met before?
No, but I know all about you. I am Paul Smith. Rich, who you were married to 20 years ago, was my older brother.
Oh my God. I never met anyone from his side of the family before.
That's because when Rich came out as an atheist at age 18, our parents disowned him. And he rejected them in turn. As far as they were concerned, they were no longer related. I stayed in the church and so avoided my parents' wrath, and have since inherited my father's estate.
And what sort of church are you a member of, Paul?
I am a Mormon. After meeting with her ex-brother-in-law, Paul Smith, Sandy has a meeting with her friends at the town's Unitarian Universalist Church on the following Sunday.
So now we know that Rich Smith came from a Mormon background. You mean he never told you that, Sandy? No, he didn't. I guess he considered it to be too much of an embarrassment. I gave myself a crash course on Mormonism several years ago. What I learned about that cult made me both disgusted with Joseph Smith and shocked at how stupid some people can really be to believing such absolute bullshit. Maybe I am coming from a biased perspective, but how are Mormons so much worse than you yourself were a decade ago, Carla? Once you start having faith in anything, what's to stop you from believing anything cult leaders tell you? Or doing anything the cult leaders command? Don't you remember what you were like to us? Touché. You are so right, Jessica. So where does Uncle Paul live now? He is now in Houston, where a branch of the Christian Way Academies was established a decade ago. He runs that school. That's strange. I thought Mormons were scorned by most so-called Orthodox Christians. But they are teaming up now. Maybe they are all getting desperate. They know more and more young people are rejecting their dogmas, and the only way they can stay relevant is by joining in coalitions with their past rivals. Scott told me last month that his parents' Kingdom Hall had to be sold to pay off debts of the Jehovah's Witnesses in Compton, and they ended up worshiping in a Baptist church on Sunday afternoons instead.
Lucy, I liked it a lot better when all the different bigoted factions were at each other's throats. You know what's even worse, Mother Jessica? I found out a few months ago that since 2017, there has been a faction among UUs trying to cause trouble for the UU over the issue of critical race theory. Those troublemakers even tried to disrupt outright the 2019 UU General Assembly in Spokane, Washington. As a black person, I find that outrageous.
Yes, Vicky, but the ringleader of that faction was defeated and then thrown out of the UU Ministers Association. He is no threat to us now.
We cannot let our guard down, ever. That's the mistake people who call themselves liberals keep making, in both politics and religion, and then right-wing bigots rise back up and try to take over society to make it like their narrow vision again.
Right. And every time that happens, more people like me and Vicky, or Jessica and Debbie, get hurt again.
Excuse me, but I overheard part of the conversation earlier about Mormonism. May I add my 2 cents? Of course. What do you have to offer? Well, for starters, I would suggest that your brother-in-law, ex-brother-in-law. Sorry, ex-brother-in-law may be a Mormon, but that doesn't make him a monster. If you treat him like he is your enemy just because he is different from you, that will only make the distance between you wider. That's a good point. I remember when I and James first came to this church when it was still Baptist and ruled by the Reverend Dave Owen. When I told people there who I was, they were amazed that I would reach out to them. I certainly was. I was there too, and I had never expected you to come to us. I didn't want her to go, but she felt she needed to learn why people there hated us, and that was the only way to find out. I feared for her safety, and that was why I ordered James to accompany her. You have to protect your sister, I said. Sandy, you had no reason to fear us. Even back then, most of us were loving people, even if our love was far from perfect. We would never have harmed Debbie or any of you for coming to visit. And it was your willingness to talk directly with those who opposed you that led many of them to change. You broke down their bigotry by not being bigoted yourselves. I know what we can do. I'm going to look at my uncle's school in Houston, and maybe then I will pay in on him a visit. That is, if at least one of you go with me. What's this about us going on a trip? Sorry I am so late. I had to do some early morning patrols around the town before coming here. So what did I miss?
Jessica and I will explain things to you later. For now, let's go home.
After some further discussion among Debbie, Carrie, and their mothers, they finally agreed to have Debbie visit Houston, accompanied by Lucy.
Thanks for doing this with me. We need to find out all we can about what the Christian Way academies would have taught had they taken over our town's schools.
Have you ever been to Houston before? I understand that it is Texas's largest city.
My mother and I went there once, but I was too young to recall the details. My mother said it involved a legal case she'd been assigned to, and I and James went along to see the city. I think James was still in diapers then.
It must have been extremely important for your mother to take you and James with her. I will ask her about it when we return.
There it is, up ahead. It is almost as large as our high school in the town.
I just hope they will let us in. I feel like we are invading enemy territory.
But we are not here to confront my uncle or anyone else. This is simply a fact-finding mission. But Paul Smith being my uncle may give us an advantage.
Welcome to the Houston branch of the Christian Way Academies, Debbie. I'm glad you decided to come and take a look at our facilities. We do indeed have much we can offer you in terms of giving your children a wholesome, faith-based education.
Well, you are certainly good at making an effective sales pitch. As someone who spent her whole life in public schools, I am curious about how things would be different here. What may I have missed out on? What can a child learn that would benefit them more than public schools? My son Richard is almost 1 year old now, so I am already concerned about his upbringing and how it can be improved so he can have the best possible start in life.
Come, and I will show you around. This school has a student body of about 800, and includes kids from 1st grade all the way up to 12th grade, and there is even a daycare for babies. So we have everything your son would need throughout his childhood.
What subjects does your school focus on?
We try to cover everything a public school would: English, history, science, health, math, and PE, but here we put a positive Christian focus on everything. We believe our values make for a more productive life for people of all ages.
What are you doing here, Lucy?
I could ask you the same question, Victoria. I thought you were still living in Los Angeles.
I was, but after I was fired from my TV talk show I had to look up other employment opportunities. No other TV station was interested in my work. Then I learned about the Christian Way Academy here needing a science teacher, and so I joined up here this month.
You, teaching science? You barely graduated from high school.
Victoria, get to your classroom now. And how do you know her, Lucy?
Victoria and I are sisters, but we became enemies after I left the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Mr. Smith, I don't want to have an American flag in this classroom. I don't believe in saying the Pledge of Allegiance, because I consider that to be a form of idolatry.
I understand that. You don't have to lead the class in the Pledge of Allegiance, but the flag stays put.
And why are you allowing those atheists here? Especially Lucy. She is a total disgrace to my family.
So far, they haven't caused us any trouble, so just do your job, Victoria.
Let's move on. It's like you can cut the tension in this room with a chainsaw. So far, everything looks quite impressive. Could I see your textbooks?
Sure, if you are willing to spend some money, I will even allow you to buy copies of our school's textbooks so you can take them home and see for yourself what we teach. You might be impressed.
So far, nothing seems out of the ordinary here. It feels very much like the schools I went to.
You don't really think Richard would belong here, do you?
Perhaps not, but I guess for children being raised in Christian families, it's not so bad.
And that's our school. Not that much different from many thousands of schools across America and elsewhere, no?
I enjoyed the tour. Thank you for having us today, Uncle Paul. I will write you a check for $200 to buy copies of several of your school's textbooks. I hope that is enough.
Agreed. And I hope I see you again. You are a very sweet and generous lady, Debbie.
So what were your impressions of your uncle, Debbie?
He seems like a perfectly sincere and respectful gentleman. He may look like my father, but he seems a lot more satisfied with his life. His faith must be doing something good for him.
Yes, but like you said, he is good at giving a sales pitch. That may be all it is. You certainly wouldn't expect him to say, "This school and my religion sucks." And what's the point of being satisfied with your life if your faith causes you to treat people like you and me like shit for being lesbian and or atheist? If you rule out becoming Christian and ending your marriage to Carrie, how will he react? You saw how Victoria looked at me. You shouldn't have to endure such hate from relatives.
Carlos, why have you called this meeting here after school hours?
For the record, Mr. Bentley, I am your boss's principal of this school, so you will address me as Mr. Hernandez while we are on the clock here, unless I say otherwise. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. My apologies.
And to directly answer your question, this past Monday, Mayor Sandy Smith sent her daughter Debbie and one of her friends, Lucy Sims, on a trip to Houston to investigate the Christian Way Academy that was there. Debbie persuaded the academy's principal, who happened to be her uncle, to sell her copies of the textbooks used in that school. Debbie brought the books to her mother and the mayor in turn brought them to me.
So now you want us to review them?
Yes. As most of you know, The owners of the Christian Wear Academies tried to take over our public schools because of a secret deal they made with Mayor Ted Anderson. Mrs. Smith exposed that deal after she took over as mayor and rejected it, resulting in a lawsuit against the town that was then defeated in court. As the history teacher here, Mr. Bentley, you will review the history textbook I was given. Miss Jenkins, you will review the English textbook. Mr. Wilson, you will review the science textbook.
Of course.
So I assume we are writing book reports like we would have students do in our classes. So when are these book reports due?
Well, I'd like you to have them all done in a couple of weeks, but I won't give you a failing grade if you take longer. Just get the work done in a timely manner, please. I'm already reviewing the math textbook, because I was a math teacher before I became principal here. Ah, it's Dr. Drake.
Carlos, you left a message for me on my phone?
I did. Are you at the hospital now?
Yes, I am working there. I get off in a couple of hours, though.
I will come by your office and drop off a health textbook I got from Mayor Sandy Smith today. I'd like you to review its contents. As the town's chief physician, I will trust your judgment on the book.
Understood. See you later.
Lucy, I have decided to turn over ownership of my pharmacy to Damien and apply here to be rehired as one of the cooks. I hope that is okay.
That's awesome. I will hire you to be head cook and a manager. You may start tomorrow. But what prompted this move?
Well, what you said about wanting to work with me again, despite us also being married and living together. And the experience I had with Penny in Boston showed she was excellent at working hard and taking orders from me, so I think this will be a good experience for me.
You are always welcome to work here again. When you left years ago, I felt this restaurant was diminished. Now it is whole again.
So Jessica is returning to here for work?
Yes. She was a co-founder of the restaurant along with me and Sandy. Sandy was the original owner and a cook, Jessica was also a cook and a manager, and I was the first waitress. Over the years, I rose to become a manager and then the owner.
So am I being demoted? I was the head cook. I'd hate to think this is because of something I did.
Not at all. Jessica is not your competition, she will be your partner. Now report to the kitchen. We need pizza crusts ready in about an hour.
So what happened to your pharmacy? Did it go out of business?
No.
It was actually quite successful, and it was the other pharmacy I was competing with that has now gone bankrupt. So I accomplished what I set out to do. Damien is now hiring new staff to both replace me and expand the business. Both of us are happier as a result.
Robot, answer the door.
As you command.
Oh, my God. He actually remembered.
Those flowers are beautiful. Who sent them?
Steve. See the note? It refers to our second wedding anniversary, and indeed he and I were married 2 years ago today.
Even though you two got divorced this year?
Yes. But because we both realized another woman needed Steve more than I did. So I let him go for her sake. And look. The other woman, Denise Callie, wrote on the card too. Sandy, thank you for caring so much for me, even though you had no reason to. I owe you my life.
Well, considering my own recent situation with Penny, I shouldn't judge. It just seems so unusual the way you are dealing with this.
Sandy Smith has called for a town hall including members of the town's PTA and many other citizens.
I wish to thank all of you for coming out here for this special meeting. I assume you have all read the pamphlets explaining the purpose of this meeting, so let's get on with it. Our first speaker tonight is Carlos Hernandez, the principal of the town's high school.
Mr. Hernandez takes the podium, and in his hands is the math textbook he'd been reviewing over the past couple of weeks.
My analysis of the math textbook used in the Christian Wear Academies indicates that the lessons are adequate, mostly, but the book had over 100 Bible quotes and references in it, most of which do not refer to math concepts. This has the effect of making the book much longer than it needed to be.
Next to take the podium was Carla Jenkins. She brings with her the English/literature textbook she was reviewing.
A decade ago, I might have been happy to use such a textbook, since I was a devout Christian back then, but now I can look at it more objectively. The book contains over 100 examples of various types of literature, including several stories taken straight from the Bible, and most of the authors are white. There is one black author, and he is American. There are no authors actually from Africa. Only 4 authors that come from East Asia and 2 from the Middle East. And all but 2 of the authors are Christian, the 2 exceptions being Jewish and from Israel. So quite simply, this book is racist in its content, and as a Native American, I do not recommend it for any school.
Mr. Wayne Bentley takes the podium next, with the history textbook he was reviewing. This book grossly distorts American history in many ways. First, it states the idea that the founding fathers of the U.S. were all devout Christians and that their Christianity motivated them to establish this republic. That's not really true. In reality, some of them, like Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, were deists, believing in a God, but not in divine revelation. Their rebellion against the British king was a rejection of the concept of divine right of kings, which is taught in the Bible. Also, the book refers to manifest destiny as a God-given right of white people to spread across the North American continent and take over land from the uncivilized Indians. Yes, they actually use that outdated term in reference to Native Americans, and they give almost no details about Native Americans as a people aside from their fighting to keep their land and thus being a threat to white settlers. The book also refers to the Civil War as a war by the Union or North to economically crush the Confederacy or South, but it consistently refers to states' rights as the issue and speaks less about slavery than I think appropriate. Without slavery, what rights were the Southern states really fighting for?
Holy crap. It's like the rights of my ancestors didn't matter, right?
So like Carla Jenkins, I think these books not only have an excessive pro-Christian bias, they are indeed racist in their tone. Next to take the podium is Simon Wilson, the science teacher.
This science book I reviewed was even worse than I expected. The book was obviously written from a creationist perspective, but instead of strawman-type arguments and claims against the theory of evolution, there is actually no mention of evolution at all, or Darwin, or the controversies in modern biology resulting from the issues related to evolution. There are plenty of references to fossils, the distribution of animals and plants, their classification, and even references to DNA and other organic molecules, but without evolution to explain all the differences and similarities among organisms. There is no way to tie all those subjects together. No references to the age of the Earth or the universe are made, and the fossils are said to be the result of Noah's flood, which is total nonsense. The book even asserts that the Big Bang Theory is positive proof of the existence of God, which is not even a scientific statement at all, but a theological one. To put it bluntly, this book sucks. Science should be taught in such a way that the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth is presented. This book fails in that regard. No child using this book for reference would be properly prepared for a career as a scientist. Finally, Dr. Drake comes up to speak, carrying the health textbook he was asked to review. The most obvious failing of this book is in the section on the reproductive systems. The book asserts that abstinence is the most effective way to prevent pregnancies, which may indeed be true, but there's also no mention at all of various contraceptive methods that may be available. Like Simon Wilson, I am dismayed at these omissions. Also, there is an emphasis on how well designed the human body is, and thus such design is a proof of God's power. Again, a theological claim rather than a scientific fact. Homosexuality and transgenderism are mentioned, but only as perversions that go against God's plan for humanity, which are also theological rather than scientific statements. And if I may speak personally here, I deeply resent the claim by the Christian Wear Academy owners that they were trying to re-establish a Christian culture here. Our town has never abandoned its Christian culture. We still celebrate holidays like Easter and Christmas, which are based on Christianity. And I myself am still a believer in Jesus as my Lord and Savior. That has never changed. What has changed is that I, and most others in this town,
don't accept and promote bigotry against any non-Christians. We consider all religions and their followers equal under the law. Those who have a problem with that, keep in mind that Jesus himself taught that we must love thy neighbor as thyself. He never said, love thy fellow Jew or fellow Christian as thyself. He even spoke of a Samaritan as one's neighbor, and the Samaritans were a despised minority among the Jews, just as atheists and LGBT people in this town were despised by most of us a decade ago. And Jesus said nothing about what we all must believe, only about what we must do. I understood that even when I was a Baptist, and I certainly affirm deeds over creeds as a Christian who belongs to a Unitarian Universalist church. So those Christian Wear Academy bigots can take their crap and shove it. Thank you!
So we really dodged a bullet, didn't we?
Yes, we did. So after this, I will have no more dealings with your Uncle Paul. He may have been nice to you when you visited him, but those textbooks he is using to brainwash kids speak of his true nature. He can never be trusted.
I understand. Let's go home.